He asks, with regard to rising autism levels, could that lead to right-wing values increasing?
Well, autism or autistic-like personality, because really what you're dealing with is a complex of disorders which can broadly be united within the rubric of what could loosely be termed a social learning disorder, but the sort of autism that generally becomes clinically significant, where people present with certain stereotype behaviors, rocking type behavior back and forth, automatic behavior. That sort of autism does seem to be associated with intolerance of ambiguity in terms of being very binary in one's thinking, tending to think about things in black or white categories. And that thinking tends to be more prevalent among people on the extremes of both the left and the right. So it's an interesting finding, actually, that engineers who are a demographic who are going to have more than their fair share of autists, this demographic is prone to producing terrorists. They found that many of these terrorists have backgrounds in engineering. There is some kind of weird connection there. That would go in line with the idea that people who are more optimizing, more interested in systems, are interested in extreme and perhaps inflexible modes of political orientation. Now, that's not to say that all engineers are terrorists, but if you have this worldview that is more systemizing, it might make you more sensitive to ideologies which are more rigid and tend to see things in more stark relief. So, this means that you should expect there to be a higher frequency of autists among both the extreme left and the extreme right.
So what is it that causes one to be left and one to be right?
Well, you'd have to ask Jonathan Haidt about that. Because Haidt's model is that there are these 5 moral foundations. There's fairness and harm avoidance, which form a supercluster that he refers to as individualism. And then there are 3 other moral foundations: authority, purity, and loyalty, which form a supercluster which is associated with group binding. And what Haidt argues is that basically there is a tendency for people on the right to value these 3 binding moral foundations. And people on the left tend not to value those things. They value the 2 individualizing values. You probably find that these values are fundamentally tilted because there's probably a trade-off in an individual's allocation of moral effort. They negatively correlate with each other, and that's where your left-right axis comes from. So, people extremely tilted towards binding values or extremely tilted towards individualistic type values, those are going to be your political extremists. And having an autistic-like personality may predispose